Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of African Economy. I am your host, Wang Fon Water. The top stories: Russia and Mali deepen trade ties, eye strategic nuclear energy deal. Flutterwave secures Cameroon license as part of Africa-wide expansion. World Bank grants South Africa $1.5 billion for infrastructure green energy. Plus, top 10 countries at war with the strongest militaries in 2025 as people discuss World War III. The US Supreme Court approved President Donald Trump's policy allowing the deportation of undocumented migrants to third countries with minimal notice. This decision, made in a 6.3 ruling, overturns a previous lower court ruling that required migrants to present risks for deportation. This ruling reflects a broader push by the Trump administration to implement stricter immigration policies on the expanded authority. In a 6-3 ruling, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned a lower decision requiring the government to give migrants a chance to explain risks they may face if deported to third countries. The country's liberal justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson dissented, warning of harm to migrants' rights. The decision comes as U.S. District Judge Brian Murphy blocked a separate Trump administration effort to deport 8 migrants from Myanmar, South Sudan, Cuba, Mexico, Laos, and Vietnam on a flight to South Sudan. Russia signed a new agreement to strengthen trade and economic relations with Mali as President Vladimir Putin hosted the West African country's military leader, Colonel Assimi Goïta, in Moscow yesterday. The two leaders met at the Kremlin for a 2-hour discussion, according to Russian state media. Putin described the relationship between Russia and Mali as following a positive trajectory through though he acknowledged that current trade volumes remain modest. He emphasized potential areas for deeper cooperation, including geological exploration, natural resource development, energy, logistics, and humanitarian efforts. One of the key deals signed was focused on nuclear energy cooperation. And while the two countries have previously discussed a strategic plan to build a Russian-designed low-power nuclear plant in Mali, the junta-led countries, following a similar path to Burkina Faso, having taken a major step towards embracing nuclear energy by officially signing the final administrative document of a historic intergovernmental agreement with Russia last week. This landmark deal represents a significant milestone in Mali's effort to diversify its energy sources and tackle the country's growing electricity needs as it seeks long-term solutions to power shortages and boost national development. United States clarified that a proposed visa review affecting 36 countries is not a blanket travel ban against Africa or Nigeria. A U.S. State Department spokesperson emphasized that the review is driven by national security mandate and not geographical considerations. Reports of an 18th June deadline were dismissed, stating no immediate travel restrictions would apply following this review. The announcement came during a press briefing yesterday where U.S. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce addressed concerns raised by journalists about the status of the plan. According to reports, Nigeria was previously affected by a similar policy in 2020 when it was added to a list of countries with restricted access to certain types of U.S. visas due to concerns over data sharing and terrorist watchlist information. Following high-level engagement and system upgrades, Nigeria was eventually removed from that list. This latest review appears to follow a similar structure, offering countries an opportunity to address identified weaknesses rather than imposing automatic bans. For the thousands of Nigerians seeking student visas, work permit, and tourist access to the U.S., the key will be how effectively the government continues to collaborate with Washington on security and identify verification procedures. Flutterwave has secured approval to operate as a licensed payment service provider in Cameroon, marking another step in its ambitious drive to build Africa's most extensive digital payments network. The Nigerian-founded fintech received the authorization from Cameroon's National Payment Systems Department, enabling it to offer its full range of digital payment solutions to businesses and individuals in Central Africa. This development strengthens Flutterwave's growing presence across Africa. Over the past year, the company has secured major regulatory milestones, including a payment system license from the Bank of Zambia, an enhanced payment service provider license in Ghana, and a payment systems operator license from the Bank of Uganda. The Cameroon license also significantly strengthens Flutterwave's presence in Francophone Africa, a market often underrepresented in fintech growth stories. It builds on the company's early partnership with telecoms giant MTN, which allowed merchants in Cameroon to accept mobile money payment through MTN Momo. The federal government of Nigeria has recorded 6.9 trillion naira in revenue between January and April 2025, reflecting a 40% year-on-year growth compared to 5.2 trillion naira during the same period in 2024. Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy Wale Yedun disclosed these in Abuja during the 2025 second quarter citizens and stakeholders engagement session briefing on the fiscal performance and reform outlook of the current administration. According to Edun, the review growth is attributable to ongoing reforms, particularly in foreign exchange policy and fiscal governance, as well as the deployment of technology and automation to enhance revenue collection across ministries, departments, and agencies (MDAs), adding that there is hope that the government will generate more revenue as the year runs by, following the expected surge in revenue from the Federal Inland Revenue Service (FIRS) when businesses file their tax returns by the end of June. According to reports, 39 countries are at war based on significant conflict-related deaths, from Ukraine with the highest of Tunisia from the lowest. A recent exchange between Iran and America has broken out, raising that number to 41. This war has many speculating about a potential third world war. Given the recent conflict between the United States and Iran, it is reasonable to conclude that global tensions have not been this high in recent years. This conflict, along with the Russia-Ukraine war, the Israel-Palestinian conflict, and the Sudan and South Sudan wars, has resulted in immense humanitarian crises and international tensions unprecedented in decades. Sudan's civil war, which began in 2023 with the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces, is still ongoing. Civilians are trapped in the crossfires, starvation is looming, and ethnic violence in Darfur has risen to atrocity levels. On the other side of the world, tensions between the United States and Iran reached a point of open warfare, in June 2025. The immediate catalyst was a joint Israeli-American bombing of Iranian nuclear facilities. This conflict, coupled with the fragile peace between the Ethiopian government and Tigray forces, Nigeria's war on terrorism, control of armed gangs in Haiti, insurgencies in Sahel region, and tension between India and Pakistan, among other regional conflicts, raises the question of which armies are well equipped to deal with further escalations, especially considering there has been talks of World War III. With that said, let's look at the chart indicating top 10 countries at war with the strongest militaries in 2025. Top on the list is United States with 0.0744. Second is Russia. Third on the list is China with 0.0788, and Pakistan ranks the 12th. On the next is Israel, 7th is Iran, followed by Ukraine, Algeria, amongst others. In the meantime, as the second half of 2025 gets rolling, certain African countries, which boast the continent's strongest currencies, continue to appreciate. After years of chaos typified by inflation, high debt burdens, and currency devaluation, a minor increase in exchange rates might provide these countries with a rare economic respite. While not all African countries are strengthening, those are showing indications of strength may profit in numerous ways. One of the most immediate advantages of its currency is lower inflation. Many African nations rely significantly on imports of basic products, including petroleum, food, industrial input. When a country's currency appreciates, imports become less expensive, lowering the cost of living for both individuals and companies. In Africa, this is especially critical considering that a lower part of the products and continent consumes are produced outside of it. A stronger currency also allows central banks to lower interest rates without risking more inflation, giving them more policy flexibility. Furthermore, currency strength, when fueled by real economic fundamentals rather than artificial regulations, may benefit local industries by lowering the cost of imported raw materials and machinery. With that said, here are the top 10 African countries with the strongest currencies in June 2025. Top on the list is Tunisia, dinar with 2.96. Second is Libyan dinar, 5.44 per US dollars. Third on the list is Moroccan dirham at 9.15 per US dollars. Fourth on the list is 10.33 Ghanaian cedi. Fifth on the list, I beg your pardon, is 13.51. And the sixth on the list is 14.44 Seychelles rupee. Eritrea Nafka 15.00, 18.10 Swazian, Lian Guinea, and next on the list is 18.10 South African Rand. Fly Safa, a South African airline, is once being named the best low-cost airline in Africa. For many Africans, a travel is long felt out of reach, seen as something reserved for business executives or international travelers, not everyday people. High fares, taxes, and limited route have made flying within the continent more of a luxury than a convenience, but there are low-cost airlines offering cheaper flights and making it easier for more people to travel across borders. Some of these budget carriers gained international recognition at the 2025 World Airline Awards, where they were honored for their service, affordability, and impact on regional connectivity. The results not only reaffirmed the continent's top full-service airlines like Ethiopian Airlines, which retained its title as best airline in Africa for the seventh of uninterrupted year, but also highlighted the growing strength of Africa's budget carriers. Leading the low-cost segment in Fly Safair, a South African airline that once again been named the best low-cost airline in Africa. Fly Safair has consistently impressed passengers with its punctuality, efficient check-in systems, and no-frills model that allows travelers to customize the journey by paying only for what they need. Other budget carriers such as Lyft and FastJet are also making waves. FastJet, which operates primarily in Zimbabwe and Zambia, has carved out a niche in Southern Africa with reliable regional services. We'll go on a break and when we're back, African economy continues after this. Stay tuned. Welcome back to African Economy. I still remain your host, Wang Fon Water. And now to the top stories. President Julius Maada Bio has assumed the rotating chairmanship of ECOWAS, succeeding Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu. The transition of leadership was officiated at the ECOWAS summit held in Abuja, Nigeria. In his handover speech, Tinubu thanked the leaders for the confidence reposed in him twice as the chairman of the authority. President Bio in his inaugural speech promised to prioritize four key areas, namely restoring legitimate order and deepening democracy, revitalizing regional security cooperation, unlocking economic integration, and building institutional credibility. Elsewhere, the World Bank has granted South Africa a $1.5 billion loan to upgrade transportation infrastructure and help its transition towards a low-carbon economy. According to the country's national treasury, deteriorating rail systems, congested port, and frequent power outages have hindered vital industries such as mining and automotive manufacturing in South Africa, contributing to slow economic growth over the last decade in Africa's most developed economy. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and his coalition government have pledged to tackle corruption and decades of poor management, as well as pursue reforms to help the country emerge from its economic rout and alleviate its extremely high unemployment rate. While it did not give specifics, the South African government said it expects the World Bank loan will enable inclusive economic growth and job creation by assisting in the removal of important infrastructure bottlenecks, especially in the energy and freight transportation sectors. South Africa's 2025 and 2026 budget has allocated over 1 trillion rand over the next 3 years towards critical transportation, energy, water and sanitation infrastructure while improving access to basic services. However, real gross domestic product was revised downward to 1.4% in 2025 from 1.9% previously projected by the Finance Ministry in March because of the worsening global outlook and the persistence of logistics constraints and higher borrowing costs. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana said government debt is projected to stabilize at 77.4% of gross domestic product in 2025/2026. The composite's leading business cycle indicator in South Africa dropped by 0.3% month on month in April 2025, revising a downwardly revised 0.8% rise in previous month. The downturn was driven by decreases in 7 of the 10 available component time series, which outweighed increases in 3 components. The largest negative contributors were a decline in the 6-month smooth growth rate in the real M1 money supply and the volume of domestic orders in the manufacturing sector. And while the all positive contributors were rises in the number of new passenger vehicles sold and the number of residential building plans approved. Nigeria's value-added tax records for the first quarter of 2025 shows distinct regional patterns in both revenue generation and allocation. The Southwest Zone generated the highest VAT at 929.86 billion naira, more than twice the amount generated by the South-South, which stood at 364.99 billion naira. The Northwest generated 68.5 billion naira, while the North Central, Northeast, and Southeast generated 52.69 billion naira, 36.4 billion naira, and 28.38 billion naira, respectively. On the allocation side, the Southwest received 258.19 billion naira, the South-South 171.18 billion naira, and the Northwest 176.73 billion naira. The North Central and Northeast were allocated 126.17 billion naira and 124.22 billion naira respectively. while the Southeast received 104.50 billion naira. The head of cooperation at the delegation of the European Union to Nigeria and ECOWAS, Mr. Massimo Do Luca, has said the organization has committed about 1.1 billion euros in support of the African Union's implementation of Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. He stated these on Monday while speaking at the fourth African Union Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Forum in Abuja, lamenting that access to finance remains a pressing challenge for businesses in the region, especially MSMEs. According to the Luca, if Africa fails to harness the potential in the informal sector for small businesses to grow, the continent would keep going round the same cycle of despair. Also, the United Nations Development Programme UNDP resident representative in Nigeria, Ms. Elsie Atafoa, emphasized the need for enabling ecosystems to help MSMEs move from resilience to scalable impact. Lastly, on African economy, let's look at the US dollars against other African countries' currency. The US dollars against Nigerian naira is at 1,550.290 and a depreciative point of 0.220, a percentage of 0.01. The US dollars against South African rand is at 17.7302, a depreciative point of 0.1312 and negative of 0.73%. The US dollars against Zambian kwacha is at 23.4000, an appreciative point of 0.120, a percentage of 0.54. The US dollars against Egyptian pound is at 5.050, beg your pardon, 0.0600, a depreciative point of 0.6200. The US dollars against Algerian dinar is at 129.793 and a depreciative point of 0.341, a negative of 0.26 percentage. The US dollars against Angolan kwanza is at 921.098, an appreciative point of 0. That brings us to today's edition of African Economy. Thank you for watching. For more business stories and the latest updates, stay tuned to African Economy or follow us on all of our social media channels at spectrumtvlive.ng. I am Wangfun Water. See you soon.